Hey everybody, how's it going out there? My name is Full Q Developer, and welcome to Living the Creative Act, where we read a bit of the Creative Act by Rick Rubin and talk about our lives as creatives. Last week we started Habits, the chapter on habits, and it was a bit of a long one, so we're split it into two, and let's hop right into it without further ado. He writes, "We all yearn to establish new, healthy, productive habits, such as exercising, eating more local natural foods, or practicing our craft more regularly. But how often do we consider examining and removing the habits that currently drive our ways? How often do we regard behaviors accepted as the way people are, or the way we are, merely as habits? Each of us has automatic habits. We have habits in movement, habits in speech, thought, and perception, habits in being ourselves. Some of them have been practiced every day since we were children. A pathway gets carved into the brain that becomes difficult to change. Most of these habits control us beyond our decisions, to the point that they function autonomously and automatically, like the regulation of our body temperature. I had recently learned a different way of swimming. It felt awkward and counterintuitive because I learned to swim when I was very young. My previous method was so ingrained, I didn't ever have to think about it. I effortlessly knew how to do it. It had worked well enough to get me from one side of the pool to the other, even though there were other ways that could take me farther and faster with more ease. In our artistic pursuits, we also rely on habits to get from one point to another. Some of them don't serve the work, or they undermine its process. When we stay open and pay close attention, it is possible to recognize these less helpful habits and soften their spell, and begin to explore new practices, ones that come in and out of our creative lives like temporary collaborators, remaining as long as they serve the work and departing when it is no longer beneficial." And then he gives a long list of advice, which we're going to get to. But let's pause there for a moment and talk about what he's saying so far. He's talking about how habits can sometimes be kind of a negative force on our lives if they're not carefully considered. And I think this whole chapter on habits is about, he seems to advise constructing helpful habits so that as pathways get carved into the brain and get difficult to change, they're things that you want. I guess one habit that I'm noticing about myself is that when I'm thinking through something and I start feeling a little stuck, I turn to social media to see what other folks are saying. And that's fine. Social media has been very helpful in so many ways in my lives. I've met so many really cool people. However, that hook, that when I get stuck, I turn to social media, that's something I'm trying to form a new habit on. And one way that I'm doing that is, you know, the way that we set like a team meeting and we like, oh, let's half an hour to discuss this topic or 15 minutes to check in at the beginning of the day. I'm trying to do that with myself. A meeting of one where I talk out loud to myself about what's going on for the day. And it's been really helpful so far. And I think I need to, the next step in the evolution of that habit would be picking a time to make sure it happens. And then at least if other times, if I get distracted by social media, it's less of a problem because I have, in fact, checked in with myself on what's going on. So that's an intention I'm setting around this chapter. And before we go further, I wanted to make a little note about advice. Is that not all advice is for everyone? I've observed many times that the advice that I give is, in fact, advice for myself. And taking my own advice has resulted in a lot of growth for me. I've seen a lot of folks out there also giving advice that it looks like they would benefit from following, but I don't want to judge too harshly. I think wisdom is also knowing when to not take advice, of knowing when someone's just in a different place from you, for lack of a better word, as far as like social or financial or just a different industry. Or sometimes it can apply and sometimes it won't. I mean, they say only follow advice for people that you want to be where they are. And I would kind of expand that to advice for starting in the same starting zone as you too, perhaps. See some good mornings in the chat. How's it going? Compile Swift, the Randy Construct, Cactus Crates. Always good to see you. Let's hop into this next section where he kind of does a rapid fire of advice. He says this is a section on things that do not benefit your work. He says, believing you're not good enough. Feeling you don't have the energy it takes. Mistaking adopted rules for absolute truths. Not wanting to do the work. Not taking the work to its highest expression or settling. Having goals so ambitious you can't begin. Also not benefiting the work, thinking you can only do your best work in certain conditions. Requiring specific tools or equipment to do the work. Abandoning a project as soon as it gets difficult. Feeling like you need permission to start or move forward. Letting a perceived need for funding, equipment, or support get in the way. Having too many ideas and not knowing where to start. Also not benefiting your work is never finishing projects. Blaming circumstances or other people for interfering with your process. Romanticizing negative behaviors or addictions. Believing a certain mood or state is necessary to do your best work. Prioritizing other activities and responsibilities over your commitment to making art. Distractibility and procrastination. Impatience. He had a whole chapter on impatience. Thinking anything that's out of your control is in your way. Cactus Crate says, I feel attacked. Yeah, same. And I'm hoping to share some of those as we kind of walk back through these. Started on slide 10. Yeah, believing you're not good enough. Yeah, this one is me. I don't have formal art training, for one. I'm all over the place in my work. Like I do front end work, I do back end work, and now I'm making like videos and stuff. Like I feel like I'm all over the place, and that's not good. But also I'm leaning into that of I'm just gonna do it, which leans into something that he talks about later of needing permission. Like I'm just gonna do it. The Randy Construct says truth can hurt. Yeah, for sure, and hopefully it's with enough sugar or salt, it can lead to something helpful. As always, if it's not helpful, Don't worry about it. Compile Swift says, I feel formal training often gets in the way with its rules taught to you and sometimes stops creative thinking. Oh, yeah, for sure. It's definitely a what's the phrase? A double-edged sword. It can definitely help you in some ways and hurt in others. And yeah, there was a whole chapter on, I think that was the chapter before this where he talks about uh, starting fresh. And the example used was the Ramones. The Ramones didn't know they were inventing punk. They were just having fun. And then he says, feeling you don't have the energy it takes. Okay, this one is a fantastic one for me. And the story I have here is I feel like my best streams, like the streams that I felt like went the best as far as me feeling good, people participating, being in flow, like those happened like when I was super tired and was planning on just canceling the stream until my spouse reminded me just how much I want to stream and just go ahead and do it. And now all that evidence is piled up, and I really wanted to cancel the stream today too. I was feeling super tired, had a big day yesterday, but here I am doing it, sticking with it for better or worse. Hopefully for the better. And then Compile Swift just mentioned something about this, mistaking adopted rules for absolute truths. In that formal training can get in the way, but hopefully it also can set you up to make good decisions. This one really gets me. Oh, Compile Swift says, same here. My best streams are the one I almost didn't start. Folks in the chat rooms always help drive the motivation and build the energy you need. Oh, for sure. I often, if there's too many people in chat, I can also feel overwhelmed. If there's nobody in chat, I can feel underwhelmed. I try to hide the how many people are talking and just think about the recording afterwards. Kind of the recording for myself. And that's another trick I use to stay present with what's going on. He says, mistaking adopted rules for absolute truths. Yeah, 100%. And I'm super passionate about this. I feel like I'm looking for something new. Like Git is kind of the de facto standard for version control, but Git could be better, right? The commands aren't really intuitive. Like the naming is pretty bad. So I supplement with I like using Git Tower, especially for doing cherry picks and merges. I think the visualness just really helps me. And there's especially like different design patterns. Like nothing's the right answer every time, everywhere. And that's what's beautiful about art is we can take new approaches. He says, what also doesn't benefit the work is not wanting to do the work or laziness. I don't think I have a problem with this. My creativity certainly has flow throughout the week or throughout the month where I can go like very, very intensely for a few days and then I'm just like dead for a few days afterwards. Or I notice, hey, I've been going hard for 8 days. I need to stop or else I'm gonna get burnt out. And I think, and also when I'm feeling burnt out, I can feel like, oh man, I'm never going to make something ever again. But I've been able to trust myself knowing that the creative spark is going to come back in a few days or a few hours and just enjoy a little time off. Randy Construct says, people tend to forget or do not understand that we are all wired differently. What works for you may not work for another. 100%. 100%. Yeah, especially with keyboards, which maybe some of you have heard this rant already. I do like my funny keyboards, and I think it's just such a great analogy of like what works good for somebody's wrists may not work for yours. I am so done with standard keyboards though. Those are, I feel like, bad for everybody's wrists. Is that fair to say? Uh, yeah, on my website, I have a whole section on the journey I went with trying out different keyboards and how I landed on this one. And as an analogy for embracing like what works for your body, works for your wrists, doesn't work for everybody's wrists. And you can, with 3D printing, there's so much stuff out there as far as cool keyboards go. You can find something that really does work for your body, which nobody else has. Nobody else has your wrists. And the other thing I want to say about not wanting to do the work or laziness is I think laziness is usually a symptom of something else. Like there's a different blocker in the way. Um, Great analogy with a keyboard, says Randy Contract. Why, thank you. Yeah, I get super passionate about keyboards. So my wrists were hurting. I had to find something different. Yeah, I think things labeled as laziness are usually a symptom of something else. Others say laziness isn't a thing at all. It's just it's just a negative word to keep people working. Let's move on. Not taking work to its highest expression. I think when getting started, this advice can be a killer. So like, don't worry about it. Like, just post it, and the next one will be better. Like each time I do this, I feel like it gets a little bit better with the visuals. I have a green screen now. I didn't have that at the start. I have scenery in the background now. I didn't have that at the start. I have the text on the screen. I didn't have that at the start. So there's always room to get a little bit better. And I think like not taking those work to its highest expression, I think this just goes back to like what you like, as we've been talking about in the chat, of like you have to make something that you like, and it's tragic if you're not. And taking the art all the way to where you want it to go, that's your responsibility that's your responsibility to yourself, I would say, as an artist. It's my understanding of what the author is saying here. And sometimes that means a couple edits. Sometimes that means not editing at all. Moving on to the next one. What also harms the work is having goals so ambitious you can't begin. This is, again, definitely me. And I think this pairs well with the previous advice of like, if you have such ambitious goals, if your highest expression is too far from now, yeah, do what you can now. Something I'm struggling with this in is I've had ideas for paintings and for cartoons like since I was 10, like forever, but I'd never really learned to draw or to paint. I've learned tons of other things though, so I don't really know what to do with these with these visions for cartoons or for paintings that I have. So I certainly already have too many ideas, which he mentions later in this list. Yeah, me making a painting that I have in my mind would certainly fit under so ambitious that I can't begin. And I don't know what to do with that. Like the whole idea of full queue is I do everything. I'll do anything. But also the name before this was All Stack Developer, and that's really just too much. All it really is too much. And where to say no. I think I'm not going to learn to paint at least for another 2 years. But I did make the emojis for the stream. That was a ton of fun. The Randy Construct said, could you work with someone to make artwork? Like you have the idea and vision, but they have the skills to make it happen. Oh, that's like what I try to, that's how I'm trying to get clients, right? Like I know how to program your app. You have the idea. Let's work together. Interesting. That's an interesting idea. Compile Swift says, perfectly healthy to want to do everything. Just don't do it all at once. Yeah, that's impossible. And definitely stuff he talks about in this in this list. Moving on. Thinking you can only do your best work in certain conditions. Oh, I love this one. This is definitely in camp. Just post it. Someone asked me recently, what's the best streaming software? I said Twitch Studio. Twitch Studio is so good for getting started. It gives you like 3 scenes already, like a be right back, stream starting, and like your main game screen. And that's how I started. Eventually you get better at it and you get more ideas that you can't do in Twitch Studio. And now I'm using OBS, but 100%, Twitch Studio is fantastic to get started with. Requiring specific tools or equipment to do the work. Oh, really? Cactus Crate says, I want to like it, but it uses so much CPU. I never really checked the CPU usage. I guess it was good enough. Yeah, and this one I definitely go back and forth on specific tools or equipment because I do like nice things. I do like iPhones, for example, as a iPhone app maker. I like iPhones. Oh wow, 37%. That is a lot. And now I have a green screen which I'm using right now. So yeah, there's room to make it better, but I didn't start with a green screen either. So am I following this advice or not? That's funny you say that though, Cactus, because Twitch Studio is built on top of OBS. Oh, I bet there's like an Electron component too. And I think that does take up a lot of resources. The next thing that he writes that doesn't benefit your art is abandoning a project as soon as it gets difficult. And I kind of wonder how he matches this up with goals that are so ambitious. Like in the previous slide, where was it? Yeah, having goals so ambitious that you can't begin, and abandoning a project as soon as it gets difficult. I think definitely there's room for new information or for new ideas. I guess what counts as abandoning a project, or what counts as difficulty? I'm not sure exactly what he means here. Feeling like you need permission to start or move forward. Yeah, exactly. The Randy Construct is talking about the last one here. And when does something being difficult become a problem? I struggle sorting that out sometimes. Yeah. He writes, what also doesn't benefit the work is feeling like you need permission to start or move forward. And that goes right back to the first one, believing you're not good enough. And I think it's easier than ever now compared to, like, I don't know, 20 years ago. Like, a lot of people have phones. You can just post to TikTok to get your feeling out there. I wish I kind of grouped these a little better. He writes, letting a perceived need for funding, equipment, or support get in the way. I guess that last one, support, of I think everyone's been there, streaming to 0 viewers or 1, and I'm so glad that everyone's here. I'm so glad that there's I guess Twitch says there's 4 people right now. That's a lot. I love it. And if I had stopped when there was 0, I think a lot of you in the chat now are streamers yourselves, and you know exactly exactly what this is about. Of continuing to get better, continuing to improve, and continuing to meet people. He writes, having too many ideas and not knowing where to start is bad for the art. Yeah, this goes back to, like, we were talking about, like, painting. Of yeah, I'm not a painter. I have ideas for paintings. And do I just say no to those and focus on the things that I'm working on now? Because I already have too many projects. The Randy construct suggested I could work with a painter, and oh, I should give you some of my ideas then, because I have way too many. Cactus Crate says he has the opposite issue, and he has no ideas. Yeah, I have too many ideas. Even spending time, like, working with a painter would be that'd be taking time away from my other work that I'm trying to do. I still have my Subway app. I'm still trying to polish FQ auth and get that ready. I still need to add, like, signing with Google to it, for example. And I wanted to take Apple Pay at some points too, or integrate with Stripe or something. So there's that project. There's this project. This project is, I guess, like, once a week, like, do some prep. Recording the scenery happens for free. Like, just tuning in once a week. This is doable. Yeah, I mentioned last week how I'm starting to write down my ideas, and I want to get those. Well, I do post them to the Discord. There's an ideas channel there for folks that are subscribed. Too many ideas or too many projects, says the Randy construct. Yes to both. I have ideas that are outside of my current skill set. I have ideas that are inside my current skill set. There's lots of projects I started and haven't finished. There's projects that I have made a lot of progress towards. Like, FQauth is ready to be deployed, and I just need to deploy it to my cluster and start using it on my admin app. Like, that's my idea. I'm going to write some stuff for my admin app for my Subway app, just so I can prove that it works, and then add signing with Apple to the main app underway, the Subway app. And the weeks just get away from me. I get so busy. Never finishing projects. Oh my God, that's exactly what I'm talking about. I guess apps are a little bit different, right? Like, you can you can publish an app, and that's a project, and then you can build on that app. You can make like a version 1.1, and is that a new project, or is that finishing the same project? Or does that go back to what he was saying earlier about bringing the art to its highest expression of what you want? If you start with your 1.0 and you keep building on it until it's something that you're super excited about. Cactus says, I tend to sit at my gaming computer and then all productivity is lost. Well, I think like he was saying last week of just setting aside 20 minutes at whatever interval is best for you is one way to get started. He writes, also not conducive to the art is blaming circumstances or other people for interfering with your process. This is definitely something I used to do a lot more. And yeah, seeing how all things get taken away, like being able to separate in my mind the circumstances from my own intentions, has been super helpful for, I don't know if overcoming is the right word, but kind of, I would say, dealing with this or digesting this. Victim mentality, yeah, for sure. And you can also look at some of the people groups that have been like victims and the art and they're still producing art. It would be nice if they didn't have any of the victimness either. Like if they weren't victims in the first place, they could have made even more better stuff, most likely. Cactus says, it's a bit of an addictive trait for me. I can accidentally waste 7 to 10 hours on games. Yeah, I've been there too. And yeah, I think that comes back to the starting small idea, or the not enough permission to start, or not good enough to start. Romanticizing negative behaviors or addictions. I guess I don't really know about this one that much. I mean, I used to play WoW a long time ago, and I knew that I needed to do it at the time, and I eventually stopped because it really was taking up way too much of my time. I really started to want to do other things. But until I wanted to do other things, I did have a lot of fun in that game. Is that romanticizing it? Yeah, exactly. The Randy Construct asks, what does romanticizing them mean? I'm not exactly sure. Looking at it through rose-colored glasses, thinking about it in a positive way? I don't know. And what makes a behavior negative? It's interesting. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure a good example here. Cactus writes, my goal to round out the weekend is to hook my Mac back up as my main rig, maybe even converting gaming rig to a server. Oh, right on. Believing a certain mood or state is necessary to do your best work. Yeah, this is definitely a killer for the after work crowd. that I've been in of like, man, I am so tired, and I really wish I was at 2 p.m. sort of the top of my day to be able to make stuff. But as we were talking about earlier, like when I was tired, I ended up having some of my most favorite streams. Um, Coincidentally, yeah, I guess detaching the mood from it, um, and just doing it anyway, because that's what you do, because that's what great artists do. Isn't that subjective? Who decides the best work? You do. You decide what you feel is your best. The Randy Contract says, sometimes I feel the need to clean my desk, set the mood or something before I can work sometimes. Is that what he's saying? Yeah, I don't know. Like there's got to be like a limit, right? It's like, I guess to take your desk example, it's like my desk is super messy. I like just kind of get the stuff away from my keyboard and then start typing. My intention was to have a clean desk, and look at it now. I think when we're not creating, like doing maintenance is certainly a good thing. I don't think he's saying always have a messy desk. The contract says, of you today, maybe you didn't have the energy or mood to do this stream, but yet here you are. Yeah, exactly. He writes, prioritizing other activities and responsibilities over your commitment to making art. This is a tough one, especially with things like family or friends or work. I would love to deprioritize work and just make my stuff. And I guess there's a big old money problem there. I guess he says specifically your commitment. I guess if someone's commitment is 12 hours a day, or if someone's commitment is, 20 minutes a week, I guess that's different. If your commitment is 20 hours a week, or, oh my God, if your commitment is 20 minutes a week, I'm going to work on my cartoon or whatever. Yeah, if you don't prioritize that commitment, then it's not going to be so good for your art. I think that's the key there. I don't think he's saying like 24/7, because I mean that would be impossible. Distractibility and procrastination. This is a tough one again for me because sometimes in my distraction I find something completely new and I'm looking for something new, so I do like my distractions. I've had different amount of success with very strict regimens, and so I'm nervous about strict regimens. Um, but I guess also like if I'm the one creating the schedule, I need to keep tweaking the schedule until it works for me. I guess committing to a schedule and then it doesn't work out is my fault, it sounds like he would say, and I can just continue to make it better. It's not that schedules are bad in themselves, perhaps. Cactus Crate says, is he basically saying to sit down, shut up, and do the work? Yeah, that's certainly one approach. Like, just do it. Just make the thing. And the thing being the thing that you want to make. That this isn't about digging a ditch, and unless you're, I guess, an artisanal ditch digger, it's about creating the thing that makes your heart sing, right? And giving yourself time to do that. And that's going to take some time. That's going to take some time. It's going to take more than one or two sessions to go. We're on episode 14 of this, and this is not how this started. This started as like we were doing live coding or taking a break to read a little bit from the book, and now it's grown into its own little podcast on Apple Podcasts. And lastly, he writes, thinking anything that's out of your control is in your way. I would add like within reason or something. uh, but yeah, finding a way where there is no way is, again, for the making stuff after work crowd or only on weekends crowd. Yeah, doing my best despite the need to make money. I'm still finding a way to make something, and I'm super proud of that. You should be. Oh, thank you. Cactus Crate says, I think he means more the mindset, like being the victim versus accepting it. Yeah, because when talking to a therapist about trauma, for example, they kind of help you realize, how it wasn't your fault. You didn't make the terrible situation happen. Uh, yeah, I'm not sure how much more to say about that since everyone's emotional journey is so different. I don't want to like say something unhelpful. Um, the Randy Construct says employment doesn't tend to make your heart sing most of the time. So taking this time and still finding that place is great. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's at least part of the meaning behind the book title. I know why the caged bird sings. Because that's what birds do, whether they're caged or not. Birds sing, man.